gets the charity that he set up in honor of his mother in a massive win for Dr. Sophie Chandoka, a woke black woman who finally had enough.
What if the one thing Harry built to honor his mother is now the very thing destroying her legacy? Millions poured into the charity, but what donors discovered left them outraged and betrayed. And now, critics around the world are asking the chilling question, was Diana's son using her name for nothing more than a brand? When Harry and Meghan first spoke about their charity, the pitch was flawless. It wasn't just about donations. It was about building a movement, carrying Princess Diana's torch into a new century. Interviews were filled with grand promises, global impact, empowerment, change that would outlast them both.
What we've found is that the enrollment at this school went up 3 times as much once the latrines were built so that girls had access to clean hygiene.
To the public, it sounded like the perfect blend of Hollywood influence and royal responsibility. And in the beginning, people believed it. Celebrities lined up to support them, donations poured in, and headlines painted the couple as a new force in humanitarian work. Supporters said this was the real Harry the son who had inherited Diana's compassion, using his freedom outside the palace walls to finally make a difference. But here's the problem. What looked like a dream on the outside was already crumbling on the inside. Behind the glossy press statements and carefully staged photo ops, insiders were seeing cracks, missed deadlines, confused leadership, and whispers that money wasn't always reaching the causes it was promised for.
Harry and Prince Siso of Lesotho resigned from their positions as patrons of Sentabale, an organization the pair launched in 2006.
The first signs didn't arrive as explosive headlines. They started quietly, buried in financial reports and regulatory filings that most people would never bother to read. But watchdogs did. And what they found didn't line up with the glowing image Harry and Meghan had been selling to the world. Deadlines were being missed. Financial records were incomplete, misfiled, or in some cases, not filed at all. One report even suggested the charity spent more money on luxury travel and administration.
Sentabale in 2006, a charity in Lesotho, Africa, dedicated to supporting children and young people affected by HIV/AIDS. Now, earlier this year, he resigned from his role in bitter dispute with the chair, Dr. Sophie Chen.
Then on the very causes it claimed to champion. For donors, that wasn't just sloppy, it felt like betrayal. At first, the media barely noticed. A few small blogs raised questions, but their warnings were easy to dismiss. Then larger outlets started digging, and suddenly the cracks in the story were impossible to ignore. Headlines began to appear, each one more damaging than the last, hinting that the charity of change might actually be a charity in chaos. The storm hit in March, and it hit hard. Out of nowhere, Prince Harry announced he was resigning from his own charity, Sentabale, the very project he co-founded back in 2006 to honor his mother's legacy in Africa. To the outside world, the move looked bizarre. Why would Diana's son walk away from something so personal? The answer came quickly, a bitter dispute with the charity's chair, Dr. Sophie Chandoka. What started as quiet disagreements spiraled into open conflict, with leaked memos painting a picture of an organization on the brink of collapse. Staff turnover was sky-high. Volunteers were leaving, frustrated and confused. Meetings that were supposed to focus on helping children had reportedly turned into endless discussions about brand partnerships and photo opportunities.
Charity's chair, Dr. Sophie Chandoka. She hit back with accusations of her own: poor governance, abuse of power, also bullying, harassment and misogyny. Here she is, talking to Sky's Trevor Phillips.
And there was quite a significant correlation between the time the organization started to see a departure of sort of major organizations and Prince Harry's departure from the UK.
But the most damaging accusations came from insiders themselves. They claimed Harry and Meghan would swoop in for carefully staged photo ops, then disappear when the real work needed to be done. Everything was about looking like changemakers, one insider said, not actually being changemakers. And that was the turning point. The charity wasn't just facing questions about paperwork anymore, it was being accused of caring more about optics than impact. For Harry, a man who had built his entire public identity on sincerity and service, this was a devastating blow. For years, Harry had wrapped himself in his mother's legacy. Every speech, every interview, Every documentary circled back to Diana's compassion and courage. He positioned himself as the son carrying her torch, the one who would continue her fight for justice and humanity. It was powerful branding, and for a long time, it worked. But as the charity scandal unfolded, that image started to unravel. Former staff, royal aides, even respected commentators began saying the one thing Harry could never afford to hear. Princess Diana would have been appalled. She built her reputation on accountability and honesty, not photo ops and PR gloss. And now, the very legacy Harry claimed to protect was being used as evidence against him. Social media erupted. Hashtags like Acardi scandal and Not Diana's Way trended for days. People who once defended the Sussexes turned cold, with one commentator summing up the public's fury in brutal terms. You can't use your mother's name as a shield while running what looks like a vanity project. People expect better from Diana's son, much better. And the backlash didn't stop in the UK. American outlets, usually softer on Harry and Meghan, picked up the story with an edge few had seen before. Even late-night hosts joined in, joking that maybe Netflix should commission a new documentary titled The Disappearing Donations. For the first time, Harry wasn't just being criticized as a public figure, he was being accused of betraying the very woman whose legacy defined him. And once that door opened, the hits kept coming, because the financial truth was about to land like a bomb. If the leaked memos and bitter resignations bruised Harry's image, the financial revelations shattered it. When regulatory filings finally surfaced, the numbers told a story no amount of PR spin could erase. Donations had poured in millions thanks to the couple's star power and global connections. But when investigators followed the money, the reality was devastating. A staggering percentage of funds had gone not to children, not to health programs, not to grassroots projects, but to operational costs. Consultancy fees, bloated administrative expenses, and yes, luxury travel. In fact, in some cases, more money was spent on private flights and five-star accommodations than on actual charitable grants. For donors who believed they were funding life-changing work, it was nothing short of betrayal. The media pounced. News programs spliced together footage of Harry and Meghan boarding private jets.
Of Justice in the state of California. It described their Archwell Foundation as delinquent because it had failed.
With cold, hard pie charts showing exactly where the money went. The side-by-side comparison was brutal, glossy images of the couple smiling for cameras, underlined by numbers that showed little reaching the people who actually needed it. Even loyal supporters struggled to defend them. One furious donor told the press, "I didn't give money so they could sip champagne in New York hotels. I gave because I believed they were funding real change. I feel conned." And the criticism wasn't limited to opinion. A US-based charity analyst summed it up bluntly. These aren't teething issues. These are rookie mistakes you'd expect from a small startup, not a global charity backed by millions and run by public figures. At this point, it wasn't just a bad headline, it was a full-blown credibility crisis. But while the world demanded answers, Harry's fury was reportedly aimed not at the mismanagement, but at the leaks themselves. And that reaction only fueled the anger. Because to the public, this wasn't about a smear campaign. This was about receipts. As the financial revelations spread, the Sussexes team scrambled to contain the fallout. Behind closed doors, staff referred to it as Operation Damage Control. The strategy was simple: drown the scandal in polished language and hope the storm passed. But the execution backfired almost instantly. The couple's first official statement read like a press release from a corporate giant, not a heartfelt response from supposed humanitarian leaders. It was heavy with buzzwords: transformative, sustainable, reimagining impact, but completely light on answers. Not a single mention of the missing money. Not one acknowledgement of the failures exposed by regulators. To critics, it was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Donors weren't fooled either. They wanted accountability, not slogans. One longtime supporter put it bluntly, "We don't care about visionary language. We care about where the money went." Their frustration only grew when insiders revealed that instead of addressing the crisis head-on, Meghan was already brainstorming a full rebrand, new name, new logo, new messaging, an attempt, critics said, to distract from the disaster. Meanwhile, Harry's reaction sparked even more backlash. Multiple sources claimed he wasn't furious about the mismanagement itself. He was furious about the leaks. To him, someone inside had betrayed their trust. But to the outside world, that sounded like denial. The facts were there in black and white, and blaming the messenger only made him look out of touch. The harder they tried to patch the sinking ship, the faster it seemed to go under. Every vague statement drew sharper headlines. Every attempt to deflect drew louder criticism. And when even their celebrity allies, once quick to post Instagram shoutouts, fell silent, the Sussex brand looked more isolated than ever. The image of Harry and Meghan as unstoppable humanitarians was gone. In its place was the perception of two celebrities scrambling to save face. And the cracks inside their team only fueled the chaos, as former staff began stepping forward with stories that made the situation look even worse. For years, Harry and Meghan could count on their inner circle of celebrity allies to rally whenever criticism came their way. A carefully timed Instagram post here, a glowing endorsement there. Hollywood had their backs. But during the charity scandal, the silence was deafening. No public shoutouts, no defenses, no carefully staged photos with A-listers. The very people who once amplified their cause now wanted nothing to do with the mess. And that silence spoke volumes. It wasn't just a PR problem anymore, it was a credibility problem. No one in Hollywood wanted to be linked to a charity scandal, especially one involving missing money and betrayed donors. For a couple who built their post-royal identity on star power and influence, that abandonment cut deep. At the same time, former staff members began breaking their silence, and their stories painted a damning picture. One ex-employee described endless meetings that felt more like brainstorming sessions for social media strategy than discussions about impact. We'd spend hours debating how to make the charity look disruptive and visionary, the source said. But no one could answer the simplest question: how many children had we actually helped this year? Another insider revealed that Meghan was obsessed with optics. Every post, every caption, every photo had to be perfect. The substance, they claimed, came second, if it came at all. Harry, meanwhile, was reportedly disengaged, focusing more on personal projects and ongoing legal battles than on the grind of running a functioning nonprofit. Piece by piece, the narrative was coming together, and it wasn't flattering. This wasn't the story of a couple unfairly targeted by the press. This was the story of an organization built on style over substance, an empire collapsing under its own weight. And just when it seemed like their image couldn't take another hit, respected voices weighed in with the harshest criticism yet. Up until this point, Harry and Meghan could dismiss critics as tabloids, trolls, or disgruntled ex-staff. But when respected voices, people with credibility and decades of experience joined the conversation, the tone shifted. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was judgment from those who mattered. Royal historians who had spent years defending Harry as Diana's misunderstood son began to change their tune. One historian told a BBC panel, "Diana's legacy was built on transparency, accountability, and real human connection. Harry's project, by contrast, seems built on branding. The difference is painful to watch." Even humanitarian leaders, figures who normally avoid royal drama, spoke out. A well-known charity watchdog director summarized the crisis bluntly: "When you build your reputation on trust and then lose it, you don't just face a scandal, you face a collapse." For Harry, the comparison to Diana was the cruelest cut. For years, her name had been his shield. But now, people weren't just saying he failed to live up to her legacy, they were suggesting he had tarnished it. One columnist wrote, "If Diana were alive, she wouldn't recognize this charity, she'd be horrified." The words stung not just because they were harsh, but because they echoed what many quietly believed. By the end, the couple's once unshakable image was in ruins. The golden aura of being Diana's son and the glamorous humanitarian duo had been replaced with something far darker: the perception of two celebrities out of touch, scrambling to hold on to influence as their credibility slipped away. But the real question remained: could they ever come back from this? Or had the charity scandal dealt a blow their carefully built empire would never recover from? When the dust finally settles, this scandal won't just be remembered as a story about missing funds or failed projects. It will be remembered as a turning point, a moment when the world stopped seeing Harry and Meghan as symbols of hope and began questioning what they truly stood for. But here's the bigger question. Was this downfall inevitable? Could anyone living under the weight of Diana's shadow, the pressure of royal expectations, and the glare of Hollywood fame have avoided the cracks we're now seeing? Or was this collapse simply the price of trying to build a new empire on borrowed trust? It forces us to wonder whether Harry and Meghan are victims of a ruthless system or architects of their own undoing. And maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about a charity. It's about power, legacy, and the fragile bond of public trust. And once that trust is broken, the question isn't whether you can win it back, it's whether the world will ever let you. No matter what Harry and Meghan attempt next, one truth lingers over every move they make: the ghost of Diana's legacy. For many, Diana represents honesty, vulnerability, and a kind of fearless humanity that still feels unmatched today. Every time Harry invokes her name, the world listens. But every misstep he makes is judged against the impossible standard of who she was. And that's the trap. Diana's story ended in tragedy, which froze her legacy in perfection. Harry's story, however, is still being written. That means every scandal, every decision, and every failed project doesn't just reflect on him. It risks reshaping how people remember her. Some critics argue that by using her memory as a shield, Harry has made Diana's name part of his battles. Supporters, however, claim that despite everything, his heart is still in the right place, even if the execution has been flawed. But here's the chilling question. What if Diana's legacy is the very thing that keeps Harry from escaping this cycle? Because for every chance he has to build something new, there's always the comparison, always the reminder, always the expectation that he must live up to a woman who can no longer defend or correct his choices. What began as a shining promise to carry Diana's legacy into a new era has unraveled into one of the biggest credibility crises of Harry's life. A project meant to symbolize healing, hope, and progress has instead become a case study in mismanagement, mistrust, and missed opportunities. For donors, the damage is financial. For Harry, it's personal. And for the public, it raises an uncomfortable question. How did the son of the people's princess lose the very trust she spent her life building? The scandal leaves behind more than broken headlines. It leaves behind a fractured reputation. In the court of public opinion, Harry and Meghan are no longer untouchable royals forging a new path. They're celebrities struggling to explain why their charity crumbled under the weight of its own promises. But here's the twist. Scandals don't always end careers. They redefine them. The real test isn't whether Harry can silence critics. It's whether he can rebuild trust in a world that may never give him the benefit of the doubt again. Because once trust is gone, money can't buy it back. Fame can't protect it. And legacy alone can't save it. And that's the chilling reality. The charity built to honor Diana's memory may now stand as the very symbol of how far her son has strayed from her vision. So, what happens next? That's the question the world is still asking, and the answer may determine not just the future of Harry's charity, but the future of his entire legacy.